I just realized this was a really special place, and a lot of special people were here. A lot of unique people, art people, music people, strange people, creative people.
This is the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, 30-minute conversations with women who have found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm Dawn Davis, and this is episode 127. Find out more about the podcast at desertladydiaries.com or engage with guests, listeners, and me on Facebook and Instagram at Desert Lady Diaries. After a friend was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2000, designer and artist Shaney Jo Darden founded the global nonprofit organization, the Keep a Breast Foundation, to raise awareness of breast cancer and to encourage prevention and early detection among young people. Since inception, Keep a Breast has expanded globally to Europe, Canada, Africa, South America, and Japan. And if you're familiar with the iconic I Love Boobies, that is one of Keep a Breast's signature awareness campaigns. And this year is Keep a Breast's 20th year. Shaney Jo is a recipient of the Yoplait Champion Award, the SEMA Humanitarian of the Year Award, which is the Surf Industry Manufacturers Association, and the MySpace Impact Award for Health and Safety. In 2011, Shaney Jo delivered the keynote speech for TEDx San Diego's The World in Our Grasp. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So as we normally start out every interview, what was your first experience with desert?
First experience with desert that I really remember was coming out to Palm Desert to visit my grandparents. So I grew up in San Diego, and we would come out here all the time to see my grandma and grandpa. And the thing that really is in my memory is that skyline from Palm Desert. Sitting outside at night, feeling the warm air, and just for hours looking at those dark mountains with the sky always changing color. Like that contrast, I think, is also a metaphor for the desert, right? Yeah. So that's really my first memory, and I loved coming out here as a kid, and it was always for Easter or for something fun.
Tell me about your experience with this part of the desert.
Well, the high desert, so I spent a lot of time in the low desert as a kid, and I started coming out to the high desert maybe like 10 years ago. A friend of mine had moved out here, and I would come out here to visit him as often as I could. And he used to own Rimrock Ranch, which most people out here know about. And so I would bring my staff out here, and we would do annual employee retreats and bring my staff kind of out of there every day to take time to learn new programs, do trainings, but also go hiking and go to the Integratron and go to Pappy's and do cool stuff.
When was it that you made a decision to actually move and make this your home?
Well, ever since coming out here and going to visit Jim at Rimrock and spending more time, and I've known Jim for 25 years and started meeting a lot of his friends here, and I just realized this was a really special place, and a lot of special people were here. A lot of unique people, art people, music people, strange people, creative people. And I was really at this point in my life a few years ago where I couldn't handle living in the city anymore. I had been in LA for 10 years, and I was ready for a change. And one of my big dreams has been to build a wellness center for cancer survivors. And so, I started looking for land. I was looking here. I was looking in Oregon. And it just turns out that I ended up here. So once I kind of made the decision, everything happened really quickly. And I've been here, living here now for 2 years.
I feel like once those of us that are here, have made that decision that we're moving, things do happen quickly.
Yeah, right.
It's like it's an automatic thing, like you just push your foot on the accelerator, and I call it the green light syndrome because nothing's stopping you. It's just all laid out very well before you.
I love that. And that's the thing, is if it's meant to be, then that's what happens, right? Mm-hmm. It was very easy. Everything just happened smoothly.
Right. I watched very briefly a talk that you did last spring, I think it was, down in San Diego for Her Power, right. And what struck me just now when you were saying there's a lot of interesting people up here, musicians, artists, strange people, all that, it took me right back to that interview because you mentioned in there early on in your career, I think it was making the surfwear, you seem to gravitate to those kind of groups of people. So do you think that it's any coincidence that you're here now with a similar crowd?
I mean, no. I mean, I'm an artist. I've always grown up as a creative person. I was a clothing designer for many years, and that's when I first met Jim Austin, where I worked for him when I was 20 years old at one of his clothing companies in San Diego. And so I was surrounded by skaters, musicians, artists. So it's just when you know your people, you know your people.
Right. Do you know Cynthia Phillips by any chance that lives up here?
No, I haven't met Cynthia.
She was on the podcast a few episodes ago, but I think that you might want to introduce yourself to her because she and her partner Matt have done a lot in the skateboarding arena, if you will. And I think they'd be interested. You might even know some of the same people, I think. And that came up for me too when I was watching that interview.
Probably, yeah. It's small, it's a small world. Even the high desert is a small world, but we're connected to many communities globally that are, our friends and the work we do. So,
right.
Yeah.
So for someone listening who is not familiar with Keep Abreast, can you just give a kind of a high level of what that organization is and does, and then kind of get into the story of how it came to be?
Yeah, we're a nonprofit organization, and it's our 20th anniversary, so it's a really special year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a strange year because obviously we're in the middle of this pandemic, and we had birthday parties galore planned, so we've really had to adjust what we're doing. I started the organization 20 years ago, and our mission is to empower young people around the world with breast health education and support. And as you mentioned in the intro, we started originally because a friend of ours, young, had breast cancer. And at that time, even still today, there isn't a conversation around prevention, around early detection, around the self-check for young women. Everything out there is really geared towards finding a cure, women over 40 doing your mammogram. And so I really felt there was a huge gap in something that could be accomplished for young women all over the world. And so, that's what we do. We do art programs, education programs. We have support programs for survivors. And then now moving here to the high desert, we're working on building a wellness center specifically just for cancer survivors.
So it started out really as basically kind of a fundraiser of sorts, right?
Yeah, I mean, it started out really just as a way for me to educate my peers about their risk. Because when it all first happened, it was shocking. I didn't know young women could get breast cancer. And I wanted to help my friend who was going through it at the time. And there was nothing out there. Everything was for older women. And so I had decided, well, I'm not into doing 3-day walks. I don't want to do any of that weird luncheon, pink ribbon stuff. I'm young. I'm an artist. I'm going to bring my community together. And that's when we first started just with the idea of making the breast cast, which you've seen, which we were part of the art tours here. Last year, I had the opportunity to cast several local women and have local artists paint them. And really, the busts are just a way to educate and start a conversation about something that is complex, difficult, painful, confusing. And so we really just, in the beginning, opened this door to create an avenue to talk to young people about their risk and about early detection.
That's fantastic. And can you talk a little bit about the inspiration for the breast cast?
Well, at the time, I wanted to do an art show to raise money, and many shows were happening with donated art or skateboards or things like that. And I was like, I don't want to just do another call all the artists and send me, a piece of art. I wanted to really tie it to the cause. And I was inspired by Frida, of course, Frida Kahlo, who, there's all these beautiful images of Frida. You see her in her bed just painting this cast on her body. And I've always loved her as an artist, and she was such a way of bringing forth conversations and causes and feelings and such beauty through such tragedy, right? And when you are diagnosed with breast cancer, it's traumatic. And so with the castings, it's a way to bring beauty to something that is so painful.
I loved that in the talk, you had it in the little box that she keeps it in. And it was just a tiny, the top of the breast. And now it's a full, both breasts and part of the torso. And I had gone over to see Kat and Bill Green at some point as they were preparing for the art tours. And Kat had just gotten her cast that she was to paint. And really, when she brought it out, I was immediately struck. I'm getting emotional now about it. It's just a beautiful way to raise that awareness and think about people who are in that situation.
Yeah, and I mean, I've casted thousands of women all over the world, breast cancer survivors, women who have been newly diagnosed, women who are 15 years out. I've casted many athletes, many musicians, many actresses, so many people. This is a way for them to contribute and also to honor someone in their life. We all know someone who has been diagnosed with breast cancer. And yeah, the casts really show the female body in a beautiful way. You see many of them in a space.
Right. I think that's what's most impressive, too. It's like it really brings out the uniqueness in each of us. We know we're unique, but that really drives it home. Do you know?
Yeah, and there's no judgment. It's just this beautiful celebration of women, and there's no, oh, I have a fat roll, or oh, one of my boobs is saggier than the other. Right. Oh, my boobs are so big or so small. You're really just appreciating how beautiful they are.
Right. And you not only give information then at many events that go on around the country about the breast checking, but you're also moved into another area about toxins and getting a head start on what young people can do to keep from having those enter. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about?
Yeah, that's one of our programs. It's called Non-Toxic Revolution. And many years ago, I read this crazy report called The State of the Evidence, which was put out by Dr. Janet Gray. And it was a big scientific study with legal language, all about the environmental links to initiating breast cancer. And I read this thing and I was seriously like, oh my God, mind blown. What the fuck? I have to do something about this. People don't know this information. How can I take this huge report? So I got a bunch of interns one summer. I was like, you guys take this thing, read it from cover to cover, and figure out how we can break this down into bite-sized, actionable steps that people can do in their everyday life, because it's so overwhelming, right? You're like, oh God, this ingredient is in this, and my mattress is toxic, and my soap is toxic, and I can't, it paralyzes people. And it's kind of how we feel right now with everything going on. There's so much information. So with the Non-Toxic Revolution, we try to just do things where people can do one little thing at a time, whether it's like reducing your single-use plastics, changing the ingredients that you are exposing yourself to through beauty products, foods, and things like that. So it's really about empowering people to be their own health advocates through education.
So in your spare time, what sort of things are you getting into up here in the desert?
Oh, gosh. Well, there's a wonderful community up here. So I've been fortunate enough to, when I did move here, I had already known a bunch of people. So that's been cool. And, really just taking time and going hiking, enjoying the nature. I live close to Black Rock, so that's a great place for me to just escape to. And, just spending time with friends, doing all the cool things. Like, there's always some cool art show. I mean, there's no shortage of cool things to do out here. Right. And people that don't live here are always like, oh my God, what do you do out there? But there's always something to do that's cool and fun. Not just like, oh, there's another talk about tumbleweeds going on. There's cool stuff.
Right, exactly. And even now I'm finding because I do a little article for the paper weekly, and it talks about what's going on in Joshua Tree. So obviously there's not a lot going on in the physical sense, but people are adapting and using our virtual tools, and either they're doing art shows and exhibitions online. I tuned into Teddy Quinn was doing an open mic on Facebook Live last night, and they kind of hand it off and somebody else picks up the live at their place and plays or sings. So it's just people are finding ways, even with what's happening right now, to just keep the art and interesting stuff rolling around.
Yeah. And I mean, we're all still working, even though we're all working from home. So we've been really busy applying for all the support we can apply for, grants, loans, all that kind of stuff. Really, that pivoting, that word that everyone is using. Right, it's the new buzzword. The new buzzword. Pivoting all our campaigns, all of our messaging. The last few weeks have been all about that. Now we're just kind of settling in, but yeah, I mean, I'm definitely busy working, but I'm also spending time in my garden.
I was going to say, because you're also arty, so what kind of projects have you had time to work on since, you've been up here for 2 years? Have you had time to work on any projects of your own?
Not really. I really want to create a space in my house for sewing because that's my jam. I did just bust out my sewing machine a couple weeks ago. I had made this really 25 years ago. I made a case for Jim Austin's stand-up bass out of, beautiful materials and denim, and it really needed some repair. Some of the zippers were busted. So I've been working on repairing that since he doesn't have any gigs right now. And it's inspired me to do a lot. My thing is really working with denim material. So I've been repairing all my jeans, patching all the holes, and I think I'm going to start making some pillows and maybe some curtains or things like that.
Nice. Because we didn't really talk about your beginnings in the fashion industry. That was your first start in running out from, was it San Diego or Fullerton out to New York, working for Tommy Hilfiger. I did my research.
Yeah, I mean, I had quite a career as a clothing designer for many years, mostly doing denim in the skateboarding industry, and it was awesome.
How long were you in New York?
I lived in New York for about 3 years, not too long. I missed home. I missed California. But it was always a dream. I'm from California. I was a clothing designer. I always, in the 6th grade talent show, I did that. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere. Dance performance. So, I had to follow through with my 6th grade dreams.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, and I'm glad I'm not there right now.
Yeah, it's really tough. I have some friends that I went to high school with because I grew up in New Jersey. So some of them live over in the city, and one of them did contract COVID-19, and she was down and out for a number of days. Unfortunately, it wasn't so bad that she had to go into the hospital or anything like that. Good. So, and I'm surprised I've not really gotten a chance to catch up with her because she does a lot of work with a girls' school in Uganda. And she's been living down there for, 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
And suddenly I saw she was in New York, and I'm not sure whether she was just there on a visit. And then this all happened, and she couldn't get back to Uganda. I'm not really sure. I haven't sorted that out with her yet, but it's affecting a lot of people.
Lots of love to our city friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. So in a couple of the things that I read, you talked about a book by, and I don't know that I'm going to pronounce his name correctly, Yvonne Chouinard. Chouinard, oh my God. My French teacher would have a stroke. From Patagonia, the company. And the book is called Let My People Go Surfing. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I mean, this book really changed my life. I think it's an incredible book for anyone who is running a business, who's running a nonprofit, who's an entrepreneur, who employs people. There was a time in Keep Abreast where the organization grew really fast. And I was lost. We're such a unique organization. We're not like any other nonprofit out there. And I was a clothing designer. So I really was like, what do I do with all of this? I don't want to do things the way everyone else is doing them. And I couldn't find a business model that suited Keep Abreast as a nonprofit, but also as such a unique and forward-thinking nonprofit. And when I read his book, Patagonia is such a, we all know this groundbreaking company that doesn't, yes, they sell clothes, but they save the world,
Yeah. Right.
And Yvonne is just such an inspiring person with all the philanthropy that he's done and the way that he organizes his company. They offer childcare, they offer, flexibility, they offer a lot. And it really helped me kind of take a step back when things were growing so fast and be like, okay, this is how I want to do it. I want to do it differently. And he's doing it. And even though he's technically a for-profit, I can do it the way he is. And
right.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. And where he is also one of the founders of 1% for the Planet, which is an amazing organization that Keep Abreast is a part of, where it pairs businesses and organizations, and businesses can be a part of it, individuals can be a part of it, and you pledge to donate 1% of your annual income to charities that are within this network.
That's wonderful. I will be sure to put that into the show notes. And
we're really proud.
Yeah, I bet. It sounds like a wonderful organization. Can you think of one or two things that you read in that book that were just really profound for you?
The title of the book is Let My People Go Surfing, and that's actually a policy that they have. And so, they're based in Ventura, California, and as this idea of flex time is something that we've all heard of. And so his thing was like, look, if there's waves, go surfing. If your kid has something going on at school, go there. The whole idea is about living your life to its fullest and doing your job at the same time. So if you want to go out and do these things and it happens to be 11 a.m. or 1 p.m., as long as it's not impacting the people around you in a negative way in your work environment, go do it. And I think that freedom, because we get stuck in this idea of like 9 to 5, you have to work 8 hours a day, and you don't. You really don't.
Exactly. Well, and I think that's something that we're finding out pretty quickly right now.
Exactly. I think that was really profound, and just his beginnings and all the work that he's done to save the rainforests and things like that. I just love that guy.
So you've moved the Keep Abreast headquarters up here to Yucca Valley. How is that all working out for you, and what is now the future for Keep Abreast now that it's here in the desert?
So we moved our headquarters from LA to Yucca Valley. We finally found a really cool office space down on Mohawk. Found some local staff, which is great because it's definitely difficult to find people to employ and that are specialized. Maybe I should say that, not to sound in a bad way. And so we're here. And we've started doing some small things in the community to start introducing the community to Keep Abreast. Last year, we were part of the Joshua Tree Pride. So we have an education booth that travels. That's been to many events, music events all over the world. And so we had our booth at Pride, and it was a really hot day last year in July. So we didn't have too many people there, but that was really the first introduction. And then being part of the art tours is another introduction. So slowly kind of letting, the community learn about Keep Abreast and be a part of the community, serve the community in any way we can. We have a beautiful lounge space in our new office, so I'd like to be able to start a group for local survivors, some type of support group, and just provide the space and let it evolve and develop on its own into what is really needed. And then the big future is that we're building this wellness center up in Rimrock. Wow. So we're just starting now in the very beginning stages of design, and it's just dirt. So we need water, we need power, we need funding, all these things. And so really, having a place for the local community, but also a place for people who are newly diagnosed with breast cancer, and also different services for women throughout their journey and after.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for bringing this to the community. I think it's welcome. Really special to have an organization that's doing the work that you're doing here in our area. So thank you.
Oh, it's needed, and it's my honor and my dream come true.
I was going to ask, when you were a kid growing up in San Diego, would you have ever imagined that this is what your life would be like?
Oh, God, no. I mean, I always knew I wanted to be a fashion designer from a super young age. I was like, I'm going to be a designer. I'm going to go to this school. I'm going to work for these companies. You know, I was like making clothes as a kid. It was like really, I've always been really just like that person that knew what was next. But then I would have never imagined I would be able to use my creativity and my skills to help people or to educate people about anything that had to do with cancer. So it just worked out that way for the last 20 years.
Well, and sometimes you've got to be open and receptive to what's coming at you. Do you know? Yeah. Instead of fighting against the tide, sometimes you just need to be open and say, okay, well, let me try this and see how it's going to work. And it usually works out.
What's next? One of my friends, she taught me this little mantra that says, please put people, places, things, ideas, moments in front of me and help me see them, make it clear. So I'm always just asking, for guidance from my angels, my guides, the universe. What do you want from me? How can I serve?
Right.
Put it in front of me and help me see it.
It's great. Great attitude. Well, thank you so much for coming today to talk with me. But before I let you go, we have our little questions that we do. This is the jar of questions. If you're listening and you don't know about the jar of questions, this content is for my Patreon supporters of Desert Lady Diaries. I will pull some chips with some numbers on them and read the questions, and Shaney Jo will answer them. And if you want to hear the answers, you can go over to desertladydiaries.com, click on the support page, and sign up to be a Patreon of the podcast. So I'm reaching in. You can see me, but they can't. All right. Cool. Let's see what we have for you. So I'm going to read the questions. We've got, what are your top 3 favorite pizza toppings? You're having a rough day. What do you do to turn it around? Was there a trait you recognized in yourself at a young age that you still use or has led you to a particular vocation? And last but not least, 1 year from now, what will you be celebrating? So again, if you want to hear Shaney Jo's answers to those questions, go to desertladydiaries.com, click on the support page, and sign up to be a Patreon of the podcast. Thank you very much for being here today. I'm so glad to have this time with you.
Oh, me as well. Thank you.
Thanks. First, I've got a shout out to Victoria E. Thank you so much for subscribing to the podcast on YouTube. I appreciate you and hope you're enjoying the podcast. Now, if you've been listening for a while, you know these interviews are typically done in my home at my kitchen table. And of course, due to the current health situation, that is not possible. So the sound quality is a lot different, and I apologize for that. Most of the research I've done to improve the sound quality is a bit more technically involved, particularly on the guest side of things. Some of these audio platforms suggest that the guest record their side of the conversation within the platform and then attach an audio file and email it to me. I know it might sound easy to some of you, but for folks with less technical internet experience, likely not. So because guests are already committing time in their day to sit with me for a 45-minute conversation, the last thing I want to do is add more time and effort for them. So I'm looking for a solution that only requires them to either take an online call from me or dial into a platform from which I can successfully record both sides of the conversation. And in the case of this interview with Shaney Jo, you may have noticed that my fan on my laptop came on about 3/4 of the way through the conversation, and that was all picked up also on the microphone. So hopefully by the next episode, you'll notice an appreciable difference in the sound quality. Thank you for bearing with me as I try and successfully meet this sound challenge. And I wanted to follow up with you because at the end of the last episode, I committed to donating 25% of total sales of Desert Lady Diaries merchandise during the last 2 weeks of April to Morongo Basin Arch, which is a local nonprofit offering assistance to local folks who find themselves homeless or in need of, say, laundry vouchers or clothing. And thanks to you and your generosity, I put a check in the mail to Arch yesterday for $30. Thanks to those of you who purchased merchandise to support this great cause. And if you'd like to support the organization directly, their website is morongobasinarch.org. That's ARCH, morongobasinarch.org. soulconnectionlife.org. And with Mother's Day coming up on Sunday, I would like to take this opportunity to wish my mother a very happy Mother's Day. If you are looking for a Mother's Day gift or for a gift for someone for Mother's Day who was like a mother, visit the Soul Connection online shop at soulconnectionjt.square.site. Pick out something lovely and have it shipped, or use the contactless delivery or pickup option. If you're enjoying this podcast, would you leave a comment or review on the platform from which you're listening? Your review may be the one that helps another listener discover this podcast. Until next time, thanks so much for listening.